everyone, and welcome back to creating a web application from scratch. In this video, we're going to start our backend authentication. So if we go to our Epics board, we're going to have our create authentication epic. So let's go ahead and go to this epic. We can see that we have a bunch of tasks that we created. So these aren't wrong tasks, but we're going to start breaking this down into a more like actionable task board. Right. So we have create front end, create a registration API, login API, front end login form. So we have these things. I'm actually think I'm going to go ahead and create another epic. I'm going to create an epic and we're going to kind of base these off of each other. So the first thing I'm going to call this is I'm going to call this backend authentication. And this is definitely a common part of project management, right? As we start to go into our like actually dig into the tasks, right? They're never going to stay exactly the same as they were when we initially started. So if I go and view my piece here, I think what we're probably going to have to start with is setting up our JSON web token, right? We're going to have a password change, login API. These are high level things that we'll probably accomplish as we go. So it's not like these tasks are going to be invalid, but we're going to create some other tasks that are going to be more relevant to like creating everything all at once. So let's go ahead and go back to our epics. So let's see, backend authentication. Let's go ahead and view this epic. Doesn't have any tasks in it right now. Let's go ahead and go to tasks and let's create a task. And the first thing we're going to do is we're probably going to need to, we're going to say install dependencies. Assign to myself. And we're going to say we need to install all the dependencies we will need to create JSON web tokens, send emails, encrypt. Well, we'll do the emails later. JSON web tokens, encrypt passwords, create, and in general, create an authentication flow. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and submit that task. We want that to be in our backend authentication, submit. And then what we'll do next is we're going to create a JSON web token secret. And so create a secret to sign and verify JSON web tokens. And so what I'm planning on doing is I'm probably just going to create these tasks as we go through our each video, each step. Next one we're going to do is we're going to add environment variables in validation. Need to add additional variables to our environment and make sure they are present when loading our app. And then we're also going to need to update our user schema. So we're going to put that in our backend authentication. So in order to handle authentication, our user schema will need to have additional values added to it. Okay, so submit. We will obviously keep adding tasks as we go, but this is what I'm hoping to accomplish today for our backend authentication. So let's go ahead and go to our Kanban board, right? And let's grab these and move them into our in progress. Let's go look at our in progress. Install dependencies, create the JSON web token secret, add environment variables, update our schema. All right, I think that's a good amount of work for today. And so let's go ahead and get started in starting our backend authentication. I'm actually going to go ahead and go to our GitHub. I highly recommend doing this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to branches. I'm going to create a new branch. I'm going to call this backend authentication. I'm going to create this branch. I don't know what that changes. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to publish it. So now we've separated our backend authentication from our main, and we'll push it to our main branch once we're done. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our text editor. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install our dependencies. So let's go ahead and in our terminal, cd into our backend and cd into our Nest server. And then we're going to run npm install, and all these commands can be found in the attached blog post to the article as well. You want to copy them from there. So say npm install at nest.js JSON web token JWT at nest.js passport. We're going to say passport so web token and be crypt. So we got some vulnerabilities, but let's go ahead and say npm install a at types decrypt net types passport JWT. And it looks like we can fix all these issues running npm audit fix. If you want to see what the details are, you can run npm audit. But let's just go ahead and run npm audit fix. All right, looks like found 0 vulnerabilities. Cool. So next thing we can do is we can create our JSON web token secret. Essentially what this is it's just a generated confidential value that's going to be used by our server to sign and validate our JSON web tokens. So during authentication, whenever we create a token, we're going to run an algorithm that's going to sign that token, and that algorithm is going to use our secret to then append the signature to that token. So whenever we receive a request from whenever a request is made to our APIs and it includes that token, we'll then decrypt it with the same secret. And if everything matches, we know that it's an authenticated request, right? And it's valid. If it doesn't match, we can say that you're not who you say you are, or something's been tampered with, and we can reject it. So that's essentially what it is. It's just going to allow us to, validate those tokens are, mean, come from our server. And so what we'll do is we're going to create that token. So we're going to say node e in quotes console log. We're going to say require crypto close that parentheses, say random bytes 48 to string base 64. Close it all up. Did not like that. Let's see. Oh, we didn't close our quotes on our base 64. All right. So there you go. Here's our generated secret. So now we can go ahead and create our environment variables. Let's go ahead, create a little section to say web token. And we're going to say web token secret. Let's paste that secret. And then we're going to say JSON web token access expiration. We're going to say that equals 15 minutes, something nice and short. And we're going to say JSON web token JWT refresh expiration 7 days. And the reason we have these two, right, is part of our high-end architecture, right? We're going to use our standard authentication model that's going to be built around these short-lived JSON web tokens, right? And these access tokens are going to be issued through those JSON web tokens and used to authorize our API requests. They're intentionally short-lived, which keeps each request fast and prevents long-lived credentials becoming a liability if they're exposed. And then alongside these access tokens, we're going to use refresh tokens. They're going to be stored server side, which are long-lived and represent the user session, right? And so an active user session rather than a single request, because they're stored in the database, we can revoke them or they can expire. And that allows us to have control over those sessions without forcing the user to log in constantly. So now that we have these created, let's go ahead and go to our app module and let's add these values to our validation schema. Required. Let's default that to 15 minutes and let's default that to 7 days. Right, so if these aren't there, we'll default, but you do have to have your secret, otherwise it'll trigger that fail. Alrighty, and I think the last thing we need to do is going to be to update our user schema. Let's come here to our user schema. You can see we got some values here already: username, email, password, first name, last name. Well, we're going to want to create some more here to accommodate for authentication. So the first one is going to be for validating emails. Right, this probably isn't something we're going to use, but let's go ahead and add it in the schema in case we want to use it. So we're going to say at prop, we're just going to say default false going to say is email verified, boolean value, come back down, prop, and we're going to say select false, just meaning that it's not going to show up in any responses unless we specifically request it. And we're going to say email verification token, give it a string, and we're going to allow it to be undefined as well. Prop, and we're going to say select false again. And then we're going to do a password reset token, also can be undefined. And that's just going to contain the generated token when someone initiates a password reset. And then again, false, because we don't want to return this in just any response. So then we're going to say at prop. We're going to say select false. And then we're going to say password reset expires. It's going to be a date, so the expiration date of a given password. And then we're going to say at prop default 0. Oops. Don't want to populate all that stuff. We're going to say failed login attempts. We're going to give that a number. Again, might not be something we use. Let's go, let's track failed logins if we want. Prop. We're going to say, I actually don't think that needs anything. And we're just going to say lock until. It's going to be a date. And then we're going to say, let's go ahead and give type string. So set an array of strings. Default going to be user. And just so we're just going to essentially create a roles value, right? So by default, everyone's going to have a role. Again, I don't think we're going to use this value, but it lets us grow the app if we want to have different user roles later down the road. So by default, everyone's just going to be created with the default role of user. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and save that. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to create some virtual property that's going to allow us to check if an account is locked or not. So we're going to say user schema virtual is locked. Get function this user and it's at lock until date. And then we're going to return this lock until. Actually, this will do. Turn this lock until and this dot lock until is greater than new date. So essentially, this is going to allow us to call is locked, and it's going to tell us if the user is currently locked down or not. So this isn't going to be saved in our database, but whenever we call the user document, from our service, this is going to automatically be calculated in the value we're going to be able to use. So we're just going to say virtual property, check if the user is locked. Beyond the virtual property, we're going to create a pre-save hook. So we're going to say pre-save hook to hash the password. So this is going to allow us to centralize password hashing so we don't have to do it in our services. So any service that would involve a password, we'd have to hash it, or we'd have to write that code directly there. This centralizes it. And so we don't have to worry about writing it over and over again. So we're going to go ahead and say user schema pre. We're going to say save hook. And then we're going to say async function this user and document. Next. And we'll just do our error handling. Void. Then we'll say if this is modified, the password value. So essentially saying if the password value has been modified, return text. Okay, I think we'll see if that just gets resolved on its own as we go through here. So then we'll try. We're going to say const salt equals await decrypt gen salt. And this is just the hash and strength. And we're going to use 12 because it's a good middleman between speed and security. So we'll say this password equals await decrypt hash this password salt. And then we're going to say next. And then handle our error. Alrighty, so now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and let's see. What does not like this? Maybe it's formatting. No. Let's go ahead and first import crypt there. Oh, duh. It's because this needs to be a parentheses, not a bracket. All right, save. So essentially what we're doing is we're checking if the password's been modified. If it has been, we then try to encrypt it using bcrypt. And if there's an error, we throw an error. Right, so pretty straightforward. Then we're going to create a method to compare passwords. So we're going to say user schema dot methods but compare password. And so this is essentially a function that we can call from our services to then compare passwords. Async, but it's tied to the user document, right? It'd be like user dot compare passwords function. So we're going to say this user and document. We're going to say candidate password as a string. And then we're going to return this as a promise. But it's going to be void. No, Boolean. Let's make it Boolean. So true, false. And we're going to say return decrypt. Compare that candidate password to our password. Right, so now here we're just passing in a candidate password and this user document. So we're automatically passing in the user document where we can get the user's password. And then we pass in the candidate password, and then we're going to use that decrypt function to compare the candidate password with the password from that's saved. All right. Next, we're going to do is we're going to create a method to increment failed login attempts. So we're going to say user schema methods. We're going to say inc login attempts equals async function and in this we're going to say this again, use that user document, and then we're going to say return as a promise void. And so that way, what we're saying essentially is that when we run this login attempt, we're just looking to see if it was successful or not, right? So it's going to, a service can call increment login attempts, and it's either, we're not going to get a Boolean value back. It's just going to, it's either successful or it's not successful in terms of the function running. It either fails or it doesn't. We don't really care about the value produced. All right, so now we're going to say if this dot lock until, so if there's a lock until value, and this dot lock until is less than today, new date, we're going to return this dot a new function that we're going to create, update one. We're going to say set failed login attempts one onset lock, onset lock until 1. Onset lock until 1 as promise. Void. Right. So then we're going to say const updates. And they're going to say record string unknown going to equal that value of increment failed login attempts 1. Const, we're going to say max attempts equals 5. And const lock minutes equals 15. So you can see the updates record string. We're going to increment by 1. All right. So now we can say if this dot failed login attempts plus 1 is greater than or equal to the max attempts updates dot set is going to equal, say, lock until new date right now plus lock minutes times 60 times 1,000. And then we'll say await this dot update 1 updates. Update. Why is it not like this? Man. Await. There we go. Okay. All right. And then the last method we want to create is going to be a method to reset our login attempts. So we're going to say method to reset login attempts. So we're going to say user schema methods. We're going to say reset login attempts equals async function this user document promise void. We're going to say await this dot update one. Set failed login attempts to 0. I am recording. You're fine. So we're going to set that failed login attempts to 0, and then we're going to onset that lock until value. Close that up. Format document. Let's click save. Alrighty. So that's pretty simple, right? After the user has logged in successfully, right, we can call our reset login attempts. So it'll automatically reset those values, right? So if you have run this method, right, and you're not locked out, right? So you got a lock until value and it's old, right? We reset to failed attempts 1 because we called login attempts 1, and we onset that lock until. But then if we update our password a few times, or if you try to log in a few times, right, we increment it up, and then we finally successfully log in, we reset those values here, right? So that's how these work. Alrighty, I think that that's about it. We do need to add those methods to our document so we can call them. So we want to say export type. Well, actually, we're going to say user document equals user and document. Document. And we're going to say compare password. We're going to say increment login attempts. We're going to say reset login attempts and is locked. Save. And actually down here where we use pre-save hook, right here. We're actually going to change this to user document, user document, user document. Right, so we want to change those instances of user and document and our methods and stuff to use the user document that we just created. So we created a type user document that is that user and document, and then we are going to export our reset login attempt, right? So in our service, we can then use the type user document. Alrighty, I think that's it. So let's go ahead and make sure we save all of our files. Come back to our piece here, move these to completed. Always nice to mark a task completed. Alrighty, and then we can go into our Git directory, and we're going to say started creating our backend authentication. We created our encoded secret, created additional variables, updated our validation, and updated our user schema. And we'll commit those files, push it. Good deal. All right. I hope this was helpful. I'm excited to continue working on our backend authentication, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for listening.